Our America is proudly ultra MAGA, not some low energy roadside rhino safari. On that note, let me just say what everybody here knows. Mike Pence will never be president. Nice guy, not a leader.
Marc?
Well, I don't know if Mike Pence will run for president in 2024, but I don't think Matt Gaetz will have an impact on that. In fact, I'd be surprised if he was still voting. It's more likely he'll be in prison for child sex trafficking by 2024. And I'm actually surprised that Florida law enforcement still allows him to speak to teenage conferences like that. So I'm not too worried about Matt Gaetz. Thanks.
All right, Marc Short.
Wow. Marc Short, former chief of staff for Mike Pence. That might lead you to wonder, or actually know, why he came at Matt Gaetz with that flamethrower after he then, of course, insulted the former Vice President Mike Pence. There's no way he's gonna win presidency. Marc Short is not holding back any more punches. It sounds like what these libs have been talking about when it comes to Matt Gaetz. I can't believe that he's even allowed to speak in front of teenagers, considering the allegations against him. We're gonna get to those allegations that you guys already know about. But this also comes off of that Talking Points USA speech from Matt Gaetz, where he said some of the most misogynistic things that he could, somehow in defense of conservatives' stance against reproductive rights in the country. Somehow just fat and ugly is the only thing you have to say in order to make any sense. But after being asked about that, Matt Gaetz apparently doesn't care. Maybe he sees he's reading the leaves of what's gonna happen for him. He doubled down. Let's watch more.
It's just pure ugliness, and I see that ugliness on the inside. I see it on the outside. You know, even in the horrible circumstance where an abortion may happen, it is nothing to celebrate and it is nothing to cheer.
Is it safe to say that based off of your comments, you're suggesting that these women at these abortion rallies are ugly and overweight?
Yes.
What do you say to people who think that those comments are offensive?
Be offended.
Be offended, be offended. Well, apparently Marc Short was offended about something else. Let's go back to what Marc Short had to say when he's talking in defense of Mike Pence. He elaborated a little bit further. So this jaw-dropping clapback from Mr. Pence's longtime aide would seem to be out of left field were it not for the ongoing investigation that the Justice Department is pursuing involving Mr. Gaetz and a former confidant and friend, Joel Greenberg, who has supposedly been cooperating with authorities. I'm rereading this type of stuff because I was saying this last night on Old School, you guys. We don't talk about the ongoing ridiculous, horrific, sometimes illegal things that these conservative politicians get involved in after we talk about it for 2 to 3 days. These things need to be repeated and reminded of folks because we just kind of let it go. Yes, that quick news cycle really does help them out. So more about what happened or what's been alleged to have happened with Matt Gaetz. So at the center of it is an accusation that the pro-Trump congressman paid for the travel of a 17-year-old girl across state lines for sexual purposes. Mr. Gaetz has strongly and repeatedly denied that and any other accusations of sexual misconduct. But the investigation has not gone away and remains in front of a grand jury, which, according to media reports last week, heard the testimony of Mr. Gaetz' ex-girlfriend under a reported immunity deal. Mr. Gaetz' former friend, Joel Greenberg, is set to be sentenced on a trafficking charge resulting from the probe later this year. So Joel Greenberg has already been caught up. He's already, I believe there's some point of a plea deal or he's cooperating to some extent with the authorities. And the next guy in line is Matt Gaetz. That's where Marc Short apparently feels this gumption, I guess is the right word, to come on TV and say things like that, because that's usually what people on Twitter are talking about. What are your thoughts, Dave?
I just say, I mean, Republicans are brutal. I mean, we think that they're brutal with Democrats. They will eviscerate each other and they have no mercy whatsoever. They don't care. Look, I don't know if Marc Short has any insights into where the grand jury is going. I do think this is a pretty interesting time with the grand jury, given that they got this immunity deal from Gaetz' ex-girlfriend. But also, I mean, Matt Gaetz, it seems like he's projecting here because, you know, and Freud said that people project when they identify things about themselves that they are ashamed of, and so they project it onto other people. And I think Matt Gaetz knows that. Look, a lot of women have said that Matt Gaetz is not the most attractive sort of person, Mr. Forehead, or whatever you want to call him. And so he probably feels some subconscious shame that he needed to pay to have sex with a woman. And so maybe when he calls other people fat and ugly, he's really talking about his own sort of sense of worth, and he's just projecting it onto other people.
There was one thought yesterday when we were talking about the whole fat and ugly. I can't believe these women's rights activists are so disgusting. The words that he had to say, and no one would ever want to impregnate you, was a part of his words. This is the ironic part. Which one is it? many of these folks who are in favor of limiting folks' rights will say, you know what, these whores keep opening their legs. Close your legs and get celibate, and maybe you won't have a baby. If you don't want to have a baby, don't participate in the activity that makes babies, all that stuff. But in the same thought process, or I guess the same groups of people say the exact opposite. They're too ugly for anyone to impregnate them. Oh, they're too fat for anyone to impregnate them. Which one is it? Are they loose, wild whores, or are they fat and ugly women who just can't get a man? It doesn't make any sense as long as you hate them. That's the one constant. And that's what Matt Gaetz has carried throughout this whole thing. Maybe they'll carry his ass off in handcuffs eventually. At least that's what Marc Short thinks is gonna happen.